How to get hired in big software companies. It's dream for a lot of people to who study in engineering college to go to a big company, get a lot of money. So I wanted to share how you can achieve your dream. About me, told you about I am a software engineer. It's been 9 years in the industry and I have taken hundreds of interviews. I hope this learnings from hundreds of interviews would be useful for you. So, what are we going to cover in this webinar? First, what really is big companies and why do we want to go there? Then, who do they expect to hire? And when is the right time to prepare and how to prepare? We'll cover all these aspects. So, without any ado, let's get started. What? Yeah, I know you must have heard all these names: Amazon, Google, Flipkart, Twitter, LinkedIn, Salesforce, Facebook, Microsoft, Uber, Lyft. There are hundreds of such big companies which work on top technologies, complex problems, which solve problems for millions of customers. And as you can see, there are lots of opportunities here. Now, next question is why do you want to go to such companies? First one I already covered that they are having a lot of complex problems which they solve from software perspective, and from learning perspective that's one of the best places to stay. You learn from the best people and you get a structured way of how things work at scale. So if you want to start a startup, then you already have that knowledge to start from the beginning and think about billions of customers. And from architecture perspective, you build your solution not just for a few people and then later on think about how you can scale. Instead, you think about that from the beginning, and that gives an edge to you, because you have that experience. And definitely they give you a very good money, so very good amount, and definitely that is a plus. But I would say learning is the best thing you can get if you work in a big software companies, and that is one of the pluses in comparison with startups or working early in the startups. I would definitely suggest you to work in startups, but if you gain knowledge on what are the best practices to work at scale, they will be very helpful for you in your startup. Then who do they expect to hire? Expert at data structures, algorithms, time complexities. Yeah, you need to know all that. Not by heart, but you need to have a very good understanding of all different kind of data structures, trees, linked list, graphs. uh, there are some problems around dynamic programming, so you should understand what those data structures are and how they are used, why they are used, and what are the time complexities for different aspects. Like in a tree, if you have a runtime, it is generally order log, and if you just want to go in the depth of the tree. Similarly, you need to have a deeper understanding of what is the time complexity, what is the space complexity of all the different data structures, or even for your solution, if you are using multiple data structures, then what is the end time complexity. Uh, you definitely need to be perfect in one language, but just one language. Nobody expects you to know a lot of languages, and there are no extra points for that. It is always good to know, but the basic is your interview would be in one language, so just prepare for that. And also they look for problem, how you are trying to solve the problem, whether you are able to progress, able to take hints. Nobody expects you to just they fire any random problem and you solve it perfectly. But what is your thought process, how are you progressing? And if they are giving some hints, are you able to pick that hint and go in the right direction? Are you able to think of different solutions for the same problem? You can think of brute force, but then how are you thinking, are you thinking of optimizing them and coming up with a better algorithm? Those are the things they look at, apart from just solving the problem. How you are solving the problem is also matters. And then basic CS fundamentals, like operating system, how it works, or networking, databases, or simple questions around languages, like what is the difference between overriding and overloading. So you should have some understanding of in depth. It is not that you need to be perfect, it is okay even if you don't remember. But I think concepts are something, once you study it well and understand it well, at least you should be able to explain in layman terms. That is the um, one aspect which they look for. And then there is, they ask you one question around any of your projects you have worked on. It can be, if you're a student, it can be your school project, final year project. If you are in a company, then one of the projects you have worked in that company and you felt that it was challenging, because they'll go in deep and try to understand whether you have deep understanding of that problem or just a superficial understanding. So that is one area. Whatever work you do, whatever you write in your CV, or whatever you are going to answer there, you should have in-depth knowledge of that problem area and how you solved it, what systems you used, and how each system or component interacted. Those clarity should be there to you. Then when is the right time? So there is no need to wait. Whatever past was past. This is the best time. You are here. You are trying to understand how to reach your dream. This is the time. Just start. Now, the biggest question is how. So, I understand there are so many, with Google, there are just so many links which where you can go to, and they tell you how to prepare. But you can get lost. There is so much information on Google that it is very easy to get lost and lose focus and try to do a lot of things and you don't see progress of yourself. So I would suggest to take a structured approach, and wherever you are, if you already have that knowledge which I'll talk about, you can skip that, or I would say just skim through and go to the next step. But do look into, do take a structured approach and have a working backwards plan, that by 3 months or 6 months you want to target a big company. Then by when you should do what, have some plan. And these are the steps, time them, and then let's see what are those steps. The first one, most important, fundamentals. There is no easy way. You cannot mug up things, because the deeper understanding you have, there is no need to mug up things. You would remember them even after years. Now, it's been 9 years. I have never forgotten how linked list work or trees work. So if you have a very deep understanding, you will never forget it, and it is very easy. So focus on your fundamentals. That's the foundation. And the book I would recommend for data structures would be Corman. It is one of the best books I have prepared. But if you have better alternatives, I'm like open, please do so. But just stay focused. try to understand the basics, whichever book you follow. My recommendation is Corman, but try to understand each and every algorithm, why it is working that way, why that time complexity is there for that algorithm. And I would suggest do code in one of the languages, whichever you want, to give your interview in. Try to code that algorithm and don't directly go to some sites and think for the solution. Looking at the algorithm, try to write it yourself. And if you're facing problems, then you go and refer online on what that solution should be. And I would suggest writing codes in some ID, that is an industry standard, and it is very easy to write code, write tests for them. So I would suggest Eclipse or IntelliJ. IntelliJ is more used, so I would prefer IntelliJ um, for writing code. And once you are done with your data structures from the book, or I would say not, don't go for completing the book. Go one data structure at a time. So you study arrays, you study each time complexity, you try to code its algorithm, then you go to Gig for Gigs, where they have solutions categorized based on the data structures. So you pick one question, try to figure out a solution. Don't jump to writing code. First, the solution should be clear in your mind. So, very focus how much time it takes. Let it take, because it does not matter how many questions you solve, but even if you solve a few questions but have a very deeper understanding, you would be able to solve new questions. That's the key. So don't take shortcuts, don't try and go and see the answers. Think about the problem. Try, go back to your data structures book, see if you're not thinking about some area, and only if you have at least spent 1 hour thinking about that problem and you're not able to make progress is when you check the solution. And once you check the solution, now you know the algorithm, you start writing code for it without looking into the site. um, and when you write code, test it in all different scenarios, try to think about edge cases, try to think about null pointer checks. um, if you were assuming that a method is getting an uh, it has some objects it is getting as a parameters, then there's a customer or a person who is calling that code, your code, can do mistakes. So don't take anything for granted, and just focus on solving that problem. And once you have completed your code, then you compare your solution with online solution and understand what is the difference and why that is better or why yours is better. And then once you have that deeper understanding, rewrite your program or fix your program to meet that standards, optimizations, naming conventions, and then that one data structure is complete. So one, and that way you will have a very deep understanding of that data structures. I promise you, you'll never forget it, and there won't be even a need to go back to that book and learn again about that data structures if you follow this method. Do test your code. It is recommended that once you have written the code, you do a dry run. That is something you just think about, okay, if I give this out input to this method, then I will try to solve it, saying, okay, in the first iteration it is input is 1, so how is my program working with that input? And you should do this in the interviews also. I'll talk about it in detail later, but this is also, you can use it in practicing. Talk about it, talk about your problem, do a dry run, and Keep a practice of speaking also when you do a dry run, because in your interviews it would be better and you would feel comfortable sharing your thoughts in the interview. No, you don't need to have anybody. Just whenever you are solving a problem, think as if you are explaining someone, and solve the problem, test your code, and once you have gained knowledge about that data structure, you can focus on the next data structure in the book. So that's your first step. Focus on the fundamentals, focus on all the data structures. Each and every one is equally important in your interviews. So don't take shortcuts. Practice, yeah, there is no. So once you have knowledge of all the data structures, you need to solve some questions, because the interview won't ask direct questions on a data structure that okay, a tree is given and now you um, write a code on iterating it, or breadth first traversal of this tree. Nobody is going to ask you a straight question. They will ask you questions, comparing it with the real world. So if you go, there is a site called LeetCode. They provide very good questions and categories. You can even choose easy, medium, hard. Start with easy questions and choose your data structure. Follow the same method which you have followed for your basic fundamentals, that you think about solving that problem, be it brute force. Then you think about optimizing it, compare it with the existing solution which is provided in LeetCode, and then and they do provide you to write code on the site itself, so it gives you very easy way to just quickly test your code for all different scenarios. um, so that's how LeetCode is the way to go to practice. But I would still emphasize, it is not that number of problems you have solved which will help you in the interviews, but how you have solved, which will definitely help. So even if you solve 50 problems but you have used this method, I am sure you would be able to solve any new problem, because that's how your mind works. It creates patterns, and subconsciously it will think about different areas or different methods to solve that problem, even a new problem. Because even in interviews, if you know a problem, ideally you should be telling them that I already know this problem, this is the solution, and they will change the problem, because they want to know how you, what your thought process is. If you already know the problem, then it's not helping them, neither helping you. And they will figure out that you already know the problem and you're not sharing, so it may go against you. Written marks. So once you have solved one problem at a time, one data structure at a time, now it's time to mix things up. And most of these top companies have similar interview pattern. So they start with a written test. It is around 1 hour or 1.5 hours depending on the company. They generally ask you to solve two questions or three questions. And the next phase, these are all automated written tests. Then they call for an interview based on your performance. That is a phone screen. So on phone it will be around 1 or 1.5 hours interview. Again, same pattern. The interviewer will ask you questions related to data structures, and try to understand how, what is your thought process, how deep is your understanding. And once you pass that round, you get an on-site. In COVID times, the on-site is happening online. Otherwise, you are called to the company office, and then you can have 4 or 5 interviews same day, with just a break for lunch. So do be prepared for that. And pattern is same. Everyone is going to ask you on data structure problems, and CS fundamental problems. They may try to assess, if you have some experience, they may try to know about you as a person as well, for ethics, whether you fit in company ethics or not. but generally for college students this area is not much focused. um, yeah, so the best way to prepare is, I would suggest Lead Code subscription. Take it. They give you mock interviews, written tests for different companies. You can choose the company you are targeting or any company, because questions are more or less similar. And then practice those interview questions. Those are timed, so 1 hour you are focused, and then they will analyze your response and show you where you are compared to all other people. It will also help you know how much preparation is more needed for you. And you can follow this, gain your confidence, and then after written test you can do the mock phone screen and on-site. They have those as well, but I would recommend for on-site to use Pram provides a platform where all different interviewees, they can take interviews of other person, and that would be a online interview with person visible, so it's a video interview very similar to how it will actually happen in your on-site interviews. So that way you would gain experience in talking through the problem or taking hints. And it is free. I think 5 interviews are free, and then for students, if you are a good interviewer of other person, then you get free interviews. So I will definitely recommend to use Pram and gain the experience of giving interview to someone um, physically present. And the important step you need to apply. So if you apply from this website directly, there are very less chances that you would get answers within 1 month or so. So I would recommend that you go to LinkedIn, try to figure out whether you have some seniors, or even if you don't know them, just try to message them and see if they can refer you. Many a times people refer, so just that you need to follow up with them. So I would suggest go from with the referral way. I am also, like, many people ask me to refer, so I go through their uh, CV. You need to create a CV. Yeah, I missed that part. Yeah, you do need to create a CV. In the CV, do focus on data structures. You need to specify areas of interest, and avoid all the stuff which does not matter to the interviewer, like your interests, hobbies. All those things does not matter to the interviewer. You can write about your achievements. Your If you're a college student, then your college marks matter, but if you are experienced, then you can just talk about the projects you have worked on in the past and what role you were in. That can be part of the CV. um, but do use referral method instead of directly applying. um, and you need to understand that other people are busy, so avoid any egos and just try to follow up. If you get a response, it is okay if someone says, I don't know you and I don't want to refer you. Accept that. But you need to achieve your dream, so just keep asking people for help. And yeah, during in this meantime, just keep practicing. So on the interview day, one of the things which I have faced in the past when I was being interviewed for the first time for this multi-billion-dollar company, um, I was like, I'm lucky. Maybe I didn't had that much confidence in myself. uh, it definitely reflects on you when you're talking to the interviewer. uh, I even paused for 5 minutes, just blank. I went blank, and my first interviewer, he was very calm and he gave me water, and from then on I was on fire, so I cracked the interview well. So I would say, do believe in yourself, and you have done hard preparation, so just trust yourself. And even if whatever is the result, you just need to give your 100%. whatever is the result, accept it and prepare for the next interview. There are just so many opportunities. I already showed you that there are so many companies open for you. Take learning from one and just move on to the next. Don't do this, don't repeat the same mistake. That's the only thing you need to take. See where you are lacking preparation, focus on that area, and then go on for the next interview. Few things which you should focus on, and as a college student nobody teaches you, is what is writing a good code. I would suggest, after you do all this preparation, you practice clean code. So it's a book I would definitely recommend any engineer. Each and every engineer actually should read this book. It is a gem. It is a Bible of engineers. It mentions like very small things are important. Naming conventions. I'll have a hands-on bit later, but mm, it tells you that if you write code after 2 years, if you are not there in the company, someone else is going to read that code. They need to understand it, and they might judge you. um, you don't need to be afraid of that, but you need to set your standards. You need to keep learning and you need to give your best. And if as a college student or a just one or two experienced person, if you show all those learnings in your interviews, you have additional points or brownie points, I would say, from your interviewers, because they don't expect that you know about naming conventions, writing modular code. And if you do that, they expect them from senior people. And you just need to know this book and you would be able to write code like them. So I would definitely suggest you to read this, but start from whatever we have talked about. Once you're done with everything, then you move to this. And another one for interview preparations is Cracking the Coding Interview. That is by Guy Lachman. I used it in the past. So if you are a book person, that is, you prefer books over online content, then I would recommend this book for you. And if you want to, if your language is Java, I would suggest a Berkeley lecture of Java. I'll share the links on the event page. And if you want to study Python, I loved the free. This is all free on YouTube. I loved it. How Corey Schaefer has explained how to learn Python and use it for programming. So I would recommend you to, if you're just starting to learn a language, probably you should use these links. These would be helpful. Yeah. Um, I would say, if you have any questions, I do have a YouTube channel. I just use it for my hobby, but you can use it to connect me, or even on the event page, if you have any questions, feel free to paste there. This is the hands-on link I would like to provide. So it has, for example, let's say this is the code you see. It is uh, a code written by a college student just to hello world you write, right? The first code in Java. So this is more like that. Hello, it is taking a string, which is the name of the person, and then it will just print out hello Rashmi. Let's say Rashmi is looking into this method. Now, it is so difficult to understand this. Even this is small code, your brain needs to do a lot of work to create pattern and understand what this guy must be thinking of while writing this code and what it should be doing. Compare it with this, where just go through it. This is pretty much self-descriptive. So if you follow this way of good naming conventions, you can see how much less work your brain has to do. Feel free to ask me any questions and enjoy. All the best for your career. Bye.